um, and it's leaving the Irish people. The Irish people are being taken advantage of, and exploited essentially, and they're witnessing a lot of change. Um, in a short space of time, massive amount of change, which is changing the culture, is changing the history of the country, in ways that may not be so beneficial, in ways that may not be so great. Now, it benefits the politicians and it benefits those in power because whatever agreement they have with the EU or whatever payouts that they're receiving for the things that they're doing right now, um, seems to be fine with them, and there's no accountability. Perfect example. You've got a government where they can spend over 336,000 euros on a bike shed. And while there's resources that are needed for the country, there's resources that people are struggling without every day. There's families that are struggling with healthcare, struggling with work, struggling with accommodation. So and when you see that injustice, you're being taken advantage of and essentially being made a mockery of by your own government. So a lot of the issues that are taking place within this country, from my perspective, it's not a case of people getting into a fight between immigrants and immigrants and the Irish, or the upper class and the lower class. This is a tactic that's always been used, is to create chaos, confusion, and division between the working class, between the lower classes, so that the people at the top do not have to be held accountable. And that's exactly what's happening. And is playing out to a certain degree. Well, to a high level of degree, that is working, right? Because that's what a lot of the conversation is based on. It's based on immigration, stop the immigration. But if you deal with the immigration issue, that's not the biggest issue right now that the country has to face. You're not being given resources, you're not being given the allocation of funds by your own government. And that same government can go and invest 300,000 into bike racks. They can waste public money on silly things, and at the end of the day, they come back and they're going to say to you guys that there's not enough funds for this or that. How many healthcare centers have been closed? How many creches have been closed? How many places where Irish families need these resources have been closed down? And the government saying they don't have funds for it, or there's not enough support for those areas. But yet money can be used to spend somewhere else. But there's no accountability. And as long as people spend their time arguing and bickering over immigration, over the unnecessary, over the things that don't actually add up to the bigger picture, it's less time that the real problem is going to be able to be addressed, and less time that you'll be able to hold the government accountable for what they should be delivering to the people. Because in a democracy, it's the government that works for the people, not the other way around. The government should fear its people and respect its people. When its people rises up and says, this is what we want, or we're not getting support in X, Y, and Z areas, they should be able to get those resources. But that is not the case of what is happening right now. And one of the reasons why I empathize with Irish people, right, on the situation that's taking place right now, when you grow up in a country and you grow up with people and you really know them in depth, right, you don't know them just from a perspective of this is the country I live in, and you don't really engage or integrate yourself within the society. You don't get to see the struggles that people are going through every day. You don't get to see the mother that has autistic kids, and she can't get resources for her kids, right? She can't get a consultation. She can't get an assessment for her children because they're telling her there's not enough spaces, there's not enough resources. You don't get to see that. You don't get to see the effects of what happens when the government cuts spending across different sectors. How many people are struggling with the likes of depression, suicide? I've had to deal with that. I've had to speak with young kids, very young kids that are on antidepressants at the age of 16, 17. They can't get the resources or the support that they need. They're in states where they're confused about life. You don't get to see that. You don't get to see the family that they can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford it because of the living conditions within the country, based on how expensive everything else has gotten. You don't get to see that and understand that unless you integrate. You don't get to have those conversations with people and see how much the working class are struggling within this country, how much the working class don't have a pot to piss in, essentially. You don't get to see those difficulties. And it might be easy for you then to say, oh, why are they complaining about? But no, put yourself in their shoes. And that's what I do. It's empathy. You have to empathize with people. And when you do that, you're able to see and understand exactly what their causes are. And, you know, that being done to you in your own home country is a painful thing. Most people that leave their home countries to come to the likes of Ireland or to come to other Eastern, to other European countries. You come here for a better life. Why? Because where you're from, your government isn't providing you with a better life. Your government isn't providing you with the resources you need. And if you can't fight for it there, you go somewhere else. Well, the Irish are different. They fight for things. Their history is that of people that fight. Their history is that of people that are courageous and they fight against oppression and they don't take it lying down. And that's exactly what's happening. It's admirable, but at the same time, you feel the level of pain that the Irish people are going through. When family members like you, I've been in a situation where, you know, I knew an Irish woman, fantastic, amazing woman, but she was struggling with severe difficulties, physical difficulties, and she had to wait many years to get surgery. But she had to live in pain for all of those years until the resources are available for her, until there's space for her to go and get all of these things done. And then the government are telling people that, well, look, the way the country is right now, we don't have enough resources. We have a housing crisis at the moment. There's not enough houses, but new people that are coming into the country, which is no fault of their own. It's not their fault. They're seeking a better life and they're coming in to get a better life. But then they're being prioritized in the housing list. They're being prioritized in giving housing, given resources. And we've seen most recently, again, when we talk about the mismanagement of funds, where certain people are coming in from certain countries and they're being given incredible amount of allowances, over 1.6 million spent for people to bring their cars over from the country that they were in all the way into Ireland. So that being done right in front of the faces of people that are suffering and struggling, they have very little already. It's gonna make them very unhappy and angry, and as rightfully so. And that's the situation that the Irish people are facing right now. And my message, I'll be completely honest, my message is not to it's not to win votes or acceptance. I don't need anybody's acceptance. I have great relationships within the Irish community with, since I've been a kid, since I've been a young kid. I've grown up here in this country since I was 8 years of age. I have powerful relationships, incredible relationships with Irish people, and that's why I know and I feel their pain, because it's not just a working relationship of people I work with. No, of people that I sit down with. I've been in their homes. I've stayed in their homes. They've stayed in my homes. They know my family. I know their family. I've people that have helped me tremendously in my career. Irish people that have put me in high positions, not a consequence of anything else other than they treat you as a human being. And most Irish people do that. So when you have those in-depth relationships and you feel their pain, you've been in the working class yourself. And for some people, it's lucky you don't feel that, but for other people, they do. There's a lot of Irish families that don't have essentially a pot to piss in, and times are difficult for them right now. Very, very difficult in their own home country, and they can't afford to buy housing in their own country. Their children are growing up, and even for their children to live well, it's a struggle right now, and that's the reality for a lot of people within this country. So you know, and that's where I support. Um, I don't support any movement, let's per se, but I empathize with the Irish people, and I think it's important that when we see them protest or when we see them, seek change and demand of their government accountability, I think we should demand of their government accountability, for everybody within the country, because even the situation for new people coming into the country isn't ideal. They're being put into a hostile situation, a hostile environments where if the government do their job, that can also be prevented to a high level. It absolutely can be prevented. And that's where, I had somebody ask me the question, why did you go on RTE and say, let's put the Irish first? I agree with a lot of the points that you've said, but can you explain to me that slogan, let's when do we start taking care of the Irish? Let's take care of the Irish first. Well, that slogan comes from exactly that. Being in a position where I've good relationships with Irish families. I know the pains and the struggles that the average Irish family is going through, the working class is going through, and not just from a perspective of a social media perspective of what people are saying on the news. No, real live relationships with people in these communities. I've been in the communities, in the working class communities. I've hung around in these areas. I know people from those areas. I've proper day-to-day relationships with many people that are from the working class. And when you hear the pains and the struggles that they're going through, it's not just from a housing perspective or an immigration thing. This is far beyond immigration. They're in a position where a lot of resources are being taken care away from them. like one example, the iPass center situations that are taking place, right? All the iPass center buildings that are being that are the buildings that are being converted into iPass centers. Do you know how many Irish people are losing jobs? People that have been working in those hotels or in those buildings for a long, long time, they're losing their jobs overnight, and they have to go seek employment somewhere else. But the world has also changed. The economy's changed. Everything is pretty much virtual right now. So the physical labor they used to do is changed, and some of those people might not be able to get jobs anymore. And some of those people might go work in a job in an area where they might not like it, or they have to move out of where they live to go look for work somewhere else. They can't afford housing for their children. They can't afford housing for themselves. Like, the cost of living in this country right now is through the roof. So on top of that, not only do they not have enough, they don't have a pot to piss in, they don't have a house to live in, they can't afford to buy proper housing in their own country because of what's going on, because of what the government is doing to this country. Their history is changing rapidly overnight. It really is. Because the new people being introduced into the country, they're not being integrated. The systems of integration that may have been there before are not there anymore. So the culture, they know nothing about the Irish culture. They're coming in and instilling their own new cultures that are coming into place. And that causes difficulty and social unrest. The history of Ireland is being eradicated essentially, and that's the fear that they have. And it's a rightful fear to have, because if it was done in any other country, you'd have the same thing. Many migrants that come to this country, we're leaving places where we're not being treated by our government well. We're not being looked after or cared for, so we're seeking a better life. And that's why many people come here. But the citizens of this country are not being taken care of, and other people that are coming in, they're actually being prioritized and given higher benefits compared to that which the average Irish person may have. And that is unfair. That's unequal, and that's an injustice. And that's why I'd call it straight down the line for what it is, irrespective of my personal background or whatever. An injustice is an injustice. And every day of the week, I'll call out the injustice the way I see it. And that's what it is. It's not about acceptance, but it's about empathy. And when you have real relationships with Irish people, you realize how great people they are, hardworking people. Irish communities, they're fantastic communities to be embedded in. They'll support you, they'll back you as one of your own. And I have deep relationships from all the way as growing up as a young man, all the way to the position that I'm in right now. I've been helped tremendously by Irish people. I have tremendous Irish friends that if I was in an issue or I was in a situation right now, I could pick up the phone and call them, and they would come to my aid, right? And those type of relationships are that's what it means, in my opinion, to be Irish. you know. And what people don't understand is being Irish is nothing to do with a passport, in my opinion. Being Irish is far more than a piece of paper. Being Irish is far more than just being born in this country. Being Irish is a way of life. Being Irish is a certain ethics. It's a care for your community. It's a love for the working class. It's the working class that fights together and they care about each other. It's a protection of your country, a protection of your culture in your own country. That's what being an Irish is. The Irish are proud. You always hear this saying, Irish and proud, because they are proud of their heritage. They are proud that they've come from oppression. They fought through oppression before. They've become victorious out of that oppression, and they are fighting people. Theirs is a fighting race. Theirs is a fighting culture. And they're people that overcome obstacles and hurdles, and they support one another. They're a real, real community. That's the true meaning of being Irish. It's far more than just a piece of paper. It's a love for your country. It's a love for your fellow man. It's a love for your Irish man. It's a respect for your fellow man. And that's what being an Irish means. And that's what's at risk for the Irish people, is that culture being eradicated, that culture being changed because their government is doing it intentionally. It's not by accident that the country's in the state that it's in. This is not accidental by any means. The country's being sold out. For what means or how much, only those that are benefiting from it will know. But it's very evident to see, and there's zero accountability, zero accountability. And that's a major problem. And those are things that the Irish people are fighting against, and those are things that are incorrect. And I think, and look, I can only speak for myself, but if that message resonates with you, then we all owe a duty of care. If you've benefited from this country or you've been helped in this country, then we owe a duty of care to stand beside our fellow man, to stand beside our Irish brothers and sisters against their flights of oppression, against their flight of a government that is not taking care of them and taking advantage of them and making their lives incredibly difficult. The lives of Irish people right now are very difficult on all aspects. It's very difficult for people to make a good living in this country, and the working class are being squeezed for so many things. Those that own small businesses, they're in difficulties. A lot of small business owners have lost out on their business because of the cost of living, the cost of rent, the cost of so many different things. It is very, very difficult for them. And the government is steering the conversation towards of, building separation, and using the immigration as the key focus point, but it's not that. That is a focal point also, but it's not the main focal point. And where we're fighting in this unity, there has to be unity. The Irish people stood with us. I'm going to speak from Black people perspective. Let's not be forgetful and ungrateful that these are the same people, that marched the streets of Dublin when the George Floyd incident happened, and the very same people that stood up in thousands, hundreds of thousands, to march the streets, take time off work, take time off all their own personal activities, and march the streets to fight for your cause, to make sure you're treated fairly as a person, you're treated fairly as an individual. And it's not by the context of your skin that you are valued, but by the value and the character and the traits that you have. Why can we not do the same in their time of oppression, is my question. Instead of preaching separation, it should be a message of unity, because it's in the best interest of everybody, right? And like I said, being Irish is not just because of the color of your skin being white, or because you're born in this country alone. It's far more than that. Being Irish is a matter of integrity. It's a matter of a culture. It's a matter of, values that we protect our own. We love one another within the country. We're community focused, a love for the working class, and a fight against those who try to oppress people within this country or take advantage of them. That is what being Irish means. And that's what is at stake to be fought for. The culture needs to be protected, because I am only who I am within this country because I learned the ways of the culture of this country. I understood what Irish people stand for. And it helped me to become a better person in myself, as an African, to mix in with their culture and take bits from them and instill it within my own values that I have from my culture also. And that is ultimately a perfect mix. And I think that is something worth fighting for.